Hi, welcome back. In this section, we're going to be talking about the maturity levels. Cmmc is a different approach to the DoD's problem of how to secure their supply chain. As you may have heard it said, the DoD does not build anything it uses. Thus, it's 100% reliant on its supply chain. The current DFARS has a few problems. Currently, it's a one-size-fits-all model. Hardly fair to require the same thing from a Fortune 500 weapons manufacturer and a small, medium-sized business that does, say, construction work. One contractor's self-assessment does not equal another contractor's self-assessment, and another problem which we touched on earlier is that the burden of verification is on the DoD logistics or acquisitions folks, a burden they are not trained for. They just want to work from an approved and trusted vendor list. Cmmc solves all of these problems to the DoD's satisfaction. You may remember that DFARS is about protecting the government's important information. The maturity levels address the fairness of the one-size-fits-all model by setting the level of effort, cost, and complexity of the maturity levels to the appropriate importance of the information needing to be protected to successfully execute the contract. More on the different types of information and the corresponding maturity level in a bit. Cmmc also addresses the obvious hole that is caused by a self-assessment. I believe Reagan said it best, trust but verify. Cmmc takes the burden of verification and enforcement off of the DoD agency's logistics and acquisitions officers' plate and gives them their approved and trusted vendor list in the form of a Cmmc certification database. Contractors can only be added to that database by a C3PAO or a Cmmc third-party assessor organization. After a successful assessment by a C3PAO, this also removes the potential inconsistencies from self-assessments. Independent third-party verification assures a consistent application of the Cmmc standard. As you may have guessed by now, the more important the information to be protected, the higher the requisite maturity level required to win the contract. There are 5 maturity levels, ranging from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and the easiest, and 5 being the most advanced and most difficult. The lowest maturity level is ML1, commonly referred to as Basic Cyber Hygiene. This minimum is a requirement for anyone that wants to do DoD contract work once the rule change is complete. Why? Because everyone touches a class of data known as FCI or Federal Contract Information. More on FCI later. That applies to both primes and subcontractors too. It consists of 17 controls, or in Cmmc speak, 17 practices. Maturity level 2 is a transition level, meaning there is no certification to be conferred at this level. It's a midway point between 1 and 3, something to aim at if you wish to improve your cybersecurity maturity. At this time, there is not a class of information associated with this level, so there won't be any RFPs with an ML2 requirement. It includes ML1's 17 practices and adds 55 more of its own, totaling 72 practices. Maturity level 3 is the next level you can be certified at, and the minimum level for contracts which contain CUI, or Controlled Unclassified Information. It includes ML2's 72 practices and adds 58 more of its own, totaling 130 practices. This is also the closest maturity level to today's DFARS requirements, which are based on NIST Special Publication 800-171, which contains 117 controls. Maturity level 4 and 5 are still a bit nebulous, but represent the smallest percentage of the DIB or defense industrial base at just 0.06%. So likely reserved for weapons manufacturers and not something most of us need to worry about. By most of us, I mean the 99% of the DIB will only need an ML1 or an ML3 certification. To give you a better idea, let's look at the numbers. Okay. So the DIB comprises approximately 300,000 contractors. 93% of them, or 280,000, will require ML1 certification. 6% of them, or 20,000, will require ML3 certification, and 0.06, or approximately 180, will require higher level certification, probably ML5, as ML4, like ML2, will likely be used as a transition level. In the next section, we'll be covering the different information types in CMMC.